Hello, my name is Rosa Leff. I'm a paper cutter and I'm also on the board of the Guild of American Paper Cutters. Today I'm going to be teaching you guys how to make this hand-cut cherry blossom. If you guys do decide to give it a try, please make sure you post it online, share it with us. You can tag Delaplane and tag Rosa Leff. Alright guys, so we're going to get started on this. The first thing you need is your cherry blossom stencil. The way I have this formatted, it should be a 5x7 when you print it, if you keep it at the actual size. That way it's easy to stick in a frame if you would like to do so, or easy to mount it to something. So all I'm doing here is I'm just taking regular Scotch tape and I'm taping it down just on two sides. The reason we only do it on two sides with such small pieces is that if, as I'm cutting, I'm going to get little shrapnel, little pieces of confetti coming out, and I don't want those getting stuck between my template and my paper. The paper that I'm using is a Canson 98-pound drawing paper. Whatever you have at home will work. Try to find something that's lighter than a cardstock, just because a cardstock is really going to dull up your blades. I would also try to avoid a construction paper if you can, because it's really powdery, so as you're cutting it's not going to have nice clean edges. And then my knife is a Fiskars fingertip craft knife. I use Excel brand blades, but any number 11 style, X-Acto style blade will work. So I'm going to start right in here with some of these little tiny pieces. I think the little ones scare people a lot, but they're actually not so bad, because you just need to make sure that wherever you're starting, that point of your knife is going right in and you're coming back. Do go slowly, because if you have a nice sharp blade, it's gonna wanna glide right through that paper. And you'll notice as I'm cutting that I always come back towards myself. So I'll do a few more so you can see what I mean. I'm starting out from my body and I'm pulling back. Starting out and pulling back. And then I'm going to that short side doing the same thing. So I'm rotating the paper as I go, starting in corners, pulling back, going slow so I don't overshoot this corner here. And I'll do this other long side, come back, turn the whole thing, and do the shorter sides. The reason that we want to do that is because if I cut the shorter side, then the paper's not as stable when I'm trying to make a bigger cut. So we want to do those longer, more continuous cuts first as much as possible. So here I'm getting to a curve, so I'm going to keep the knife in and I'm going to turn the paper slowly as I go. If that seems tricky for you, I would recommend making lots of little small cuts, right? It's okay to just tap your knife in and do a little bit. So if you've made a longer cut and you want to go back into it to keep going, instead of just kind of guessing at where exactly it begins, you can kind of drag your knife across until it falls into that slice and then keep going. So I'm going to go right from my corner and keep cutting back. Right from my corner and keep cutting back. I'm starting with the leaf because I like to do, pieces that I think are more of a continuous shape first. Feels like I've made more progress that way, but you can really start on any part of this. I think this is a good beginner part because it has those corners that you're going to need to practice, and the curves are bigger. Once you get into the smaller curves, that gets a little bit trickier, but I will show you guys how to do those when we get over there. Wherever you decide to start, make sure that you're staying on that side of the paper cut as much as possible. So it can be tempting to do a little piece over here and you're like, oh, these corners are not working for me, I don't want to do this, and then come over to this side. But what happens is that you'll leave a little island in the middle of paper that has not been cut yet, and that's going to become really hard to go back and cut because the paper on both sides of it isn't supporting it. So paper actually stretches while you're cutting it, and if you're stretching it on both sides, it's just going to rip when you go back to cut the middle. So I'm cutting these guys out. I'm going to go ahead and cut out this side of the leaf, and then I'm going to break my own rule. I'm going to go show you guys how I do some of that petal side over there, some of the actual cherry blossom. Remember, do both the long sides, then come back and do the short ones. If you have a piece that doesn't pop right out there, sometimes I just take the tip of my knife and I stab it straight down into it, so that white stencil part came out, and then so did the pink. This here is more of a curve, so I'm going to turn the paper as I'm doing it. Then I'll go back in. That one didn't come out, and I think this corner here did not quite get cut all the way, so I'm going to put my knife right back down into it and then lift it out. So I see now that it's stuck between the stencil and the pink paper, so I'm just going to lift it up and shake that out a little bit. Also remember to wipe down your surface, whatever you're cutting on, because if you have those extra scraps underneath, then you're just giving yourself more to cut through. You're making more work for yourself and you're not going to get as clean of lines. I'm working on this self-healing mat here, but if you don't have one of those at home, if you don't have a rotary mat like for quilting or something like that, you can use a plastic cutting board or a hard piece of cardboard, like the back of a legal pad works well. I do this for sure when I'm traveling or if I'm teaching big workshops and I need just little pieces rather than having to make sure that everyone has a rotary mat. You will notice that because they aren't self-healing, they're going to keep their slices in them, so it'll start to have some texture underneath, which can pull on these little thin lines. So just be careful as you're sliding your paper around. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do some of this piece. Remember that you are not moving over here until you've finished all of this leaf and worked your way across, but I want to show you guys how I get some of these textures in. So here's another curve. It's not a hard point, so I can't just turn it and go back that way. So I'm going to make lots of little cuts. I'm tapping my knife in, lifting it, turning the paper, tapping my knife in, lifting and turning the paper all the way around. And you notice that I came out past here. I came out past where the V is. And that's because when I come back and I do it the other way, now I've got kind of an X there. And if there's an X that overlaps, I know that when I go to pull this white piece out, it's not going to stick. There's not going to be any little piece of it there that's still attached. So it just makes things a little bit easier to remove. So I'm turning, I'm going to go back to this corner, turning my paper all the way around. Starting in the corner, coming out, I made another little X there, overshooting. Here I'm going corner to corner, so I want to go very slow because I don't want to go past this white line. And again, if your knife is sharp, then it will want to go past very, very easily. If you're finding that you have to put a lot of pressure on your knife in order to get anything to cut, or if you're finding that it's dragging slowly, that probably means that your knife blade is too dull and you need a fresh one in there. So I'm going to start at this corner, I'm going to work my way around. Start at the corner, working my way around. That was a big curve, so I just moved the paper with my knife still in there. But down here in this bottom, this is a much smaller curve, so I'm gonna have to do what I was saying before about turning the paper a lot as I'm cutting so that my wrist is always at the same angle because I want to be pulling back out. Again, I like these little Fisker's craft knives that wrap around your finger. I think they give you more control, they put less pressure on your wrist, but the technique is exactly the same if you're using a straight handled knife. I overshot there, I'm giving myself a little X. Here this piece is very small, so I know I need to make sure I'm going slowly. And I'm actually going to tap down a second time because I just wanted to make sure I wasn't overshooting that. I'll do a few more pieces here. Here's another one, this curve. I should be able to get just turning the piece, but then down here it's smaller. This one I should be able to get just turning the paper. Yep, and then I'll come back around. So you'll notice the paper really moves around a lot. I've got a loose piece in here. I want to make sure that doesn't get trapped under my cut. So I'm going to lift up the whole thing. I'm going to brush off my work surface again and keep going. Again, I'd recommend that if you're doing this, if you're following along at home, you start with the leaves and work your way across. I'm going to start now to cut out some of the outline because I think that actually once you've finished all of the cutting is one of the trickiest parts. And I want to make sure I show you guys how we lift that out. So I'll start here. I'm working my way around. I overshot there and I gave myself a little X. I don't want any resistance when I go to pull out the finished paper cut. Because it is a real shame if you have done all of the work to cut out these delicate little details and then at the end you tear it lifting it out of the stencil. Lifting it out of your pink paper or whatever color you're using at home. Same as the inside, those small little shapes. I'm turning the paper, I'm following these curves. I'm overshooting and making X's along the edges. And please, please, please do not do any of this outline until you have finished all of those interior shapes, until you have cut out all of this white that's here. If you do that, it's very hard to keep the paper in the right spot, and you're gonna end up with some mismatched lines and potentially accidentally cutting something that you did not mean to. So this is your very last step, cutting around that outline. All right, so I cut all the way around here. I've got all of my overdrawn X's where I overshot it, intentionally working around the outside just to make sure there's no reason for it to pull here. And I can see it's starting to lift up a little bit. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna remove that stencil layer with my hand. And of course, yours will have all of these beautiful cutouts already inside of it. I'm just gonna show you from here how we remove this exterior. So I'm gonna pin the paper cut itself down with my fingers, and I'm gonna lift gently, right? See, it's catching here a little bit, so I wanna make sure I come and I just tuck that right in so it falls right through with my nail, with my finger, sometimes also with a pair of tweezers, that'll work. So I'm gonna move my fingers around and lift as I go around. The reason that you do this is that if any of these little corners have not been fully cut, you'll need to go back in with your knife and grab those before you pull it any further. You don't want to rip this off and then find that it was really stuck somewhere and that you've ripped right through your paper cut. And again, yours will already have all of those details in the middle. I've already cut this paper cut, this cherry blossom, in orange, and I actually did it in a pink and a green as well. So I'm going to be layering these to go for kind of a pop art vibe. So you can see there what it looks like with the 3 colors. You can glue them down, you can use them individually, you can find different pattern background papers, whatever you think will look best. Thanks for watching.